This is going to be part 5 of Federalist 52. As you can see, that little sheet of paper says PBS channel, the series Liberty. It's been a while since I've reminded you that for these Federalist Papers to make sense, you have to have some background knowledge of the U.S. history. I'm hoping that I've been giving you small pieces of information while we've been going through these papers to help you learn a little bit more about America. But when I started, I said make sure that you watch 2 or 3 documentaries that are available about American history, because they have nice maps in them, and the video work gives you a lot more information about where these states are, because the maps I put in front of the camera, I know they're blurry and they're not, the quality they should be. I'll like them to be, but I want to introduce you to, what's available out there, so you take advantage of it. PBS, I've said, the series Liberty. C-SPAN, I've always said, it's wonderful. So many resources, so many lectures, so many tours of the cities, panel discussions. So this is part 5 of Federalist 52, and I will start with the paragraph that says, this is towards the end, let us bring our inquiries nearer home. So he looked at the parliamentary election history, the election history in Parliament, House of Commons of England, and then took a quick look at what was going on in Ireland. But now he's going to say, let's study, or let's take a look at what has happened in the state of Virginia in the past century or so. So let us bring our inquiries nearer home. The example of these states when British colonies claims particular attention. At the same time, that is so well known as to require little to be said on it. The principle of representation in one branch of the legislature at least was established in all of them, but the periods of election were different. So different states had different election cycles. The elections were held at different times, and they had different length of time before you could run for election of the lower house of the state legislature. They varied from 1 to 7 years. Have we any reason to infer from the spirit and conduct of the representatives of the people prior to the revolution that biennial elections would have been dangerous to the public liberties? The spirit which everywhere displayed itself at the commencement of the struggle, and which vanquished the obstacles to independence, is the best of proofs that a sufficient portion of liberty had been everywhere enjoyed to inspire both a sense of its worth and a zeal for its proper enlargement. This remark holds good as well with regard to the then colonies, whose elections were least frequent, as to those whose elections were most frequent. So he says, whatever state we look at before the revolution, and we look at some of the ones that had elections every year, some of the ones that had election every 6 months, some of the ones that have elections every 3 years. He says the variation is there, but it's nothing to make us turn away from this biennial elections that the new Constitution has suggested. Virginia was the colony which stood first in resisting the parliamentary usurpations of Great Britain. It was the first also in espousing by public act the resolution of independence. In Virginia, nevertheless, if I have not been misinformed, elections under the former government were septennial. This particular example is brought into view not as a proof of any particular peculiar merit, for the priority in those instances was probably accidental, and is still less of any advantage in septennial elections, for when compared with a greater frequency, they are inadmissible, but merely as a proof, and I conceive it to be a very substantial proof, that the liberties of the people can be in no danger from biennial elections. Well, according to historian J.R. Pohl, in one of his notes to the Federalist Papers, he says, Madison probably was not careful in talking about how often elections took place in colonial Virginia. He says there might have been 7 years. Madison says 7 years, but the historian says that there's a good chance that they might have been every 3 years from the facts that we have. But anyways, Madison comes and says, any way you look at it, even though we were the first state to send a resolution to declare independence and all of these other things that the great state of Virginia has done. But when we look at it, look at our own history, the results that come to mind is that biennial election every 2 years is safe for us, will be safe for the country. The conclusion resulting from these examples will be not a little strengthened by recollecting 3 circumstances. The first is that the federal legislature will possess a part only of that supreme legislative authority which is vested completely in the British Parliament, and which, with a few exceptions, was exercised by the colonial assemblies and the Irish legislature. It is a received and well-founded maxim that where no other circumstances affect the case, the greater the power is, the shorter ought to be its duration. So this maxim in politics and government has been that the more power you want to entrust into the hand of representatives or a group, the shorter the duration of that authority should be, just to play it safe. And conversely, the smaller the power, the more safely may its duration be protracted. So he says we really haven't given all the powers to the House of Representatives, so relatively small power, so instead of annual election, every 2 years elections, biennial elections would be safe. In the second place, it has on another occasion been shown that the federal legislature will not only be restrained by its dependence on the people as other legislative bodies are, but that it will be moreover watched and controlled by the several collateral legislatures, which other legislative bodies are not. And in the third place, no competition can be made between the means that will be possessed by the more permanent branches of the federal government for seducing, if they should be disposed to seduce the House of Representatives from their duty to the people. And the means of influence over the popular branch possessed by the other branches of the government above cited. With less power, therefore, to abuse, the federal representatives can be less tempted on one side and will be doubly watched on the other. So don't forget, these are some of the other resources you have. libraryofcongress.gov. These are some of the scholars and professors that I've said you can watch their books, watch their videos. Even if you can't read their books, you will learn a lot. And I highly recommend all the videos by Ken Burns. He's a good storyteller, and he's got a great series on the Civil War. He's done a few on the American founding. Just watch any of them. A History of the West. Him and Lynn Novick recently did the 18-hour series on the Vietnam. But definitely watch all of his videos. He tells the story of America from a different angle.